Well, welcome, guys. Appreciate you taking the time today. We're just going to go jump right in here. I'm going to shortly share my screen, and I hope we can have a good time and learn something today is my goal. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. And I'm sorry, I've still got some people rolling in here. I'm just going to keep admitting people here for a second. I know we're a little bit late. If you don't mind, if you have your chat pulled up, just drop in the chat where you're calling in from today. I am based out of Oklahoma. It is windy here today, but no tornadoes. So that's a good thing. Excellent. We got Illinois, Virginia, Kansas, South Dakota. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to get rolling. Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get going. If you don't mind, just somebody drop in the chat one that you can see my screen just to make sure that our software is all working correctly. And there we go. Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you for that feedback. All right. Well, today I'm not planning to just read these slides to you. What I want to do is try to help think through something that there's a lot of shop owners don't think about very much. I know we have some shop owners. I know Eric is on this call. I think Eric is doesn't have much DRPs, which is awesome. But I think there's a lot of shop owners out there that don't spend a lot of time thinking about through this sometimes. And I would just like to walk through this today. And hopefully you can take away at least one little nugget of something of knowledge that is helpful for you. Let's go to the next slide if I can get my computer to cooperate. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about why this topic matters right now. There's a lot of body shops that stay busy through DRP work, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. DRPs can absolutely keep the work coming in, and I know there's a lot of opinions around DRPs. I'm going to try to keep that out of my presentation today. But busy work doesn't always mean that we have control. So, what many shop owners feel, even if they don't always say it, is that there's too much of their business depends on forces outside of their control. And if a large share of your car count is coming from DRPs, then changes in referrals, flow, insurer behavior, market conditions can very quickly affect your shop. So the real issue is not whether DRPs are good or bad. Like I said, there's lots of opinions around that. I'm going to try to stay away from that today. The real issue that I want to talk about today is the dependence, because when too much of your business is coming from one source, you as the shop owner or the manager have less control over the kind of work coming in, less control over long-term growth, less control over the future of your shop. And that is why this matters. And this webinar is designed to try to help you think about how to create more balance, more control, more stability without taking on a lot of extra risk. Now, let's talk a little bit about the pressures that many shop owners feel every day. So, even when the shop is busy, it can still feel unstable. One month, the car count is up, the next month, it's down. And as you know, costs keep rising, margins keep getting tighter, parts keep getting more expensive, labor pressure, technician shortages, everything feels tighter than it used to. So the real stress is not just about getting cars out the door, it's actually trying to grow the business when everything feels tight and there's too much that's outside of your control. And that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, because you're working hard, your team is working hard, but it can still feel like the business is reacting instead of leading. And when that pressure builds over time, most owners start really just wanting the same thing. They just want more control, not necessarily just more volume. Now, this is an important point because I want to keep this balanced. And like I said, I want to keep the opinions and the emotion out of this as much as I can. I'm not here to say that DRPs are bad. Do I have an opinion about DRPs? Yes, I have an opinion about DRPs. But for a lot of shops, DRPs have and they still play a major role in keeping the flow of work coming in and keeping the business moving. The DRPs can help to create some consistency, but on the flip side, they also shape how the business is run, how the flow of work coming in. They shape the kinds of jobs that the shop is seeing. And over time, they can actually shape the direction that the shop grows. So, like I said, the question is not whether DRPs are good or bad or helpful or unhelpful. What we really want to talk about is whether you're depending on them too much. Because when one source plays too big of a role, it starts influencing more than just volume. So before we go any further, I want to make the goal of this webinar very clear. This is not about you going out tomorrow and cutting all your DRPs. It's definitely not about something that creates new risk for your shop. The goal is very simple. It's just to create more balance, more control over where your work comes from, more control over the type of work coming in, and more control over how your business grows. Because when a shop has a healthier mix of work, the shop is in a much stronger position. You're less reactive, you're less exposed, you're more stable. So that's how I want you to try to view this webinar through that lens of being less reactive, less exposed, more stable, not making decisions out of fear or making drastic decisions, just choosing that path of more control. So this is where I think a lot of shop owners quietly feel tension. And I know you guys probably know what I'm talking about. The shop can look busy. There's lots of cars in the lot. The team is working. Stuff is going on. But underneath that, the business can feel fragile because volume doesn't always mean stability. When there's too much volume, depending on DRPs that you don't control, you can still feel that exposure even when things look busy. But a stable means you have a healthy control over where the work comes from. And I think it's important for us to separate that because a lot of shop owners spend years chasing busy when they really want stability. They want to know that their business is secure and stable. Here's a very simple idea, but I think it's also a very important one. If most of your shop's work is coming from one source, the business is carrying more risk than it may appear to be carrying. Even if your volume looks good today, even if the schedule's full, even if things feel steady at the moment, because when one channel supplies too much of the work, any change to that channel can affect the shop quickly. And this isn't necessarily just DRPs. Maybe it's fleet work. Maybe it's some other large channel that's bringing you most of your work. That can really affect the shop very quickly. So that's why having one channel is a risk. You want to ensure that the problem is not just low car count, it's not concentration, it's this problem of having too much dependability on one source. Not saying that fleet work is bad, not saying that DRPs are bad, but that dependency on whatever that channel might be, that creates exposure for you when you're counting on one main source or one main channel of work. So when a shop has limited control where the work is coming from, that affects more than just volume. It affects things like planning, it affects your confidence, it affects how you feel about growing the shop. Because if the flow of work depends heavily on outside decisions that you do not have any power over, then your business, your decisions become much more reactive. You're watching what's going on rather than controlling it, rather than controlling the volume. You're adjusting to what comes in instead of building the pipeline that you want coming in from various channels. It affects how aggressively you can hire. It affects how confidently you can invest into the future. So this is not just a marketing issue or a sales issue. This is a business management, a business control issue. So like I've said before, the real risk is this lack of control. You can have a lot of volume, but you can still be very vulnerable if that volume is coming from one main source. You can have cars coming and going, but still be exposed, still feel that exposure because you know a large portion of them are being driven to you by a particular source. So that's why this conversation, I want to take it bigger than just DRPs. It's really about the control over your business. How much control do you have over the flow of work? How much control do you have over the type of work? How much control do you have over the future direction of your shop? That's the real issue that we're talking about today. Not volume alone, but that dependency. Now, this is where we need to be honest about, I think, why so many shops, and here, this is an opinion, but I feel like a lot of shops stay in this position because DRPs can feel very predictable. They feel familiar. They feel like that safe source of volume because work is already flowing through that system. The shop knows how to operate inside of that. And when you're just trying to keep the schedule full, you're trying to keep production moving, avoid the car count going down, that's the kind of predictability that's hard to walk away from. So most shops not stay dependent because they're making a bad decision. It's just they stay dependent because DRPs solve the problem that they have, and they have this kind of false sense of stability and they reduce uncertainty. And when you don't have direct work built out, that predictability can really feel like the safest option. And that's why it's tempting to stay maybe stuck in a position or lean too heavily on this channel of work. Now, here's the other side of the equation. If DRPs feel predictable, direct work can feel less certain because it's harder to build, it's harder to measure, it's less immediate than the work already coming in through existing DRP relationships. And when you're busy running the shop, that uncertainty makes it easy to push direct marketing, direct work off to the side. Because if this one source, DRPs, feels familiar and dependable, the other feels like it's going to take time. And we just tend to stay where we feel safe. And that's why direct work tends to get delayed, not because we don't want more control, not because we don't understand the value, but building that source feels harder than just maintaining the DRPs or that main channel of work. So I don't think this really typically a motivation problem. It's probably more of just a certainty problem where it feels uncertain to become our own direct repair shop rather than the insurances. And my last slide just leads right into this one. Here's another big reason shops tend to stay dependent. You as an owner or you as a manager, you're not sitting around with extra time trying to figure out what's the next project, the next growth plan to work on next, you're typically really buried in the day to day. You're dealing with production issues, customer questions, insurance, communication, staffing, team, everything else that keeps a shop running every day. So even if you know you need another source, it's easy to not have the time or the mental space to go out and build it. And that's where, again, it can easily get pushed off to the side. That direct work can get pushed off to the side, not because it doesn't matter, but there's so much urgent situations inside the shop that take over and don't give you that time to really build, could we say, a second growth engine of direct repair. We're too busy just keeping the shop running. Here's another reason that I think a lot of shops tend to stay stuck in this place. They're not in full panic mode. The shop is full enough. They're just kind of smoothly rolling along. The shop stays busy to keep moving. Everybody's working, and we just are avoiding making some major changes. There's not enough pressure to make us take action. And because of that, building our direct work pipeline keeps getting pushed off. We're going to do that later when things slow down, or we're going to do it later when I have more time. I'm sure we all can sympathize to those thoughts and those feelings, but later usually doesn't come. And we just kind of stay in this middle zone where things are functioning, but we're really exposed to whatever channel of work we're counting on to bring us that work. And sometimes shops stay in this place for years. It's not because the owner or the management doesn't care, it's just because they are stuck there. So, like I said before, I am going to try to keep my opinions out of this about DRPs. And I think when we hear a topic like this, we might be tempted to think, we got to get rid of all of our DRPs. And that is not necessarily my goal. If you don't have any DRPs, I would say 100% keep it that way. If you have DRPs, don't necessarily go cut them right away. This is something we need to think through and work through. So my goal is not to make you go out and cut your DRPs, or not even necessarily to get to zero DRPs, but the goal is to have better balance, because your shop will be much healthier when you are not depending on one source of work, one source of leads. When we have multiple ways that cars are coming in, it gives you more flexibility, more confidence, more control. So as we move forward in this webinar, I don't want you to think in like extremes. I want you to think in terms of balance. How do we reduce overdependency without just creating a lot of instability in the business? How do we build more control without just recklessly making changes? That's my real goal here. So if more control does not necessarily mean zero DRPs, what does it mean? It means better balance. A healthier shop usually does not rely too heavily just on one source of work. Instead, it has a mix of work. Some work might be coming in through DRPs, some coming in through referrals, some coming in through fleet accounts, some coming in from dealership relationships, some coming in through just people finding you online. That balance matters because it gives you more options, it creates flexibility, and gives you that control and building that foundation for your shop. Obviously, more control means that you have better job mix. You can actually pick and choose a little more what you want coming into the shop, what you want in your shop. If you have a healthier mix of work sources, you can actually say no to some. You can bring in different work mix. And it gives you the ability to move toward what you do best. Maybe you don't want to do, I'm going to use an extreme illustration. You don't want to do any restoration, but let's say you're seriously slow. I'm sure you've been tempted to take it in sometimes already. When you have a good mix of work coming in, you don't need to fall back on that. Here's another major benefit of having more control over where work comes from, and this is planning. When we have a healthier mix of work and a better understanding of the demand, we can manage it with more confidence. Maybe it's hiring that next team member. We can do that with more confidence. Maybe it's production planning. Maybe it's growth decisions. What should we be doing? Should we be adding a location? Should we be adding ADOS recalibration? But when your business depends on one outside source, planning can be really hard to do because you don't know, you don't have control. It's not predictable. So, this is where the conversation starts to shift here. Even in a market where DRPs matter and referrals matter, customers are still comparing their options. They're still looking around. They still are making decisions. And you know as well as I do that insurance companies are, I'm they're steering. I probably shouldn't use that word, but they are attempting to steer people to their preferred shops as much as possible. But I will say customers are still researching, they're still looking. And that means that gives you an opportunity to win that work every single day. A lot of us can be tempted to assume that DRPs are so strong, customers' choice doesn't matter anymore, but that's not true because when customers have a choice, they're going to choose the shop that's the most visible, the most credible, and the easiest to trust. And that shop is by far going to have the advantage. And that is what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. We want to build these to give you more balance, more control, so you can make obviously better choices for the business. Here's another point that I think it's good for shop owners to understand. A lot of your customers are not doing deep research. They're not spending 5 hours researching what shop to take their car to. They are not studying out, here are 10 different shops and carefully weighing out each of the details. Which one has this certification? Which one is better at this? Looking at all the reviews. They're just trying to solve a problem. And normally it gets solved very quickly. And they are narrowing down the field really fast. And often that's down to 2 or 3 options very, very quickly. And those are the shops that are getting considered. Everyone else is getting ignored. And that's why visibility and credibility matter so much. Because if your shop doesn't make it into that list, you're out of the running before the customer ever even can contact you. They don't even know you exist. So when we talk about building more direct work, this is really going to be the first objective. We don't necessarily want to make your shop famous nationally. We just want to make sure that your shop is one of the few options that's getting considered, that you are actually being able to have that conversation. So once a potential customer, has narrowed it down to just a few shops, they're usually looking for 2 things. They're looking for trust and they're looking for convenience. They want to be able to feel confident that your shop is real, it's credible, it's professional, and they also want it to feel easy. And that's why things like reviews, clear information, a simple path to call or request an estimate matters so much. At this stage, the customer is not trying to become an expert on auto body repair or collision repair or your business. They're just trying to reduce the risk and make a decision that they feel good about for them and their family. So the shop that looks trustworthy and is easy to deal with, you're 100% going to have the advantage. And that is what makes direct work winnable, because even when there's several shops in the mix, the customer still is going to lean toward the one that feels the safest and the simplest. Remember, the majority of us make emotional decisions, and that is exactly what people are doing when they're choosing an auto body shop. So when you put all of this together, the pattern starts becoming clear. The shop that is visible gets seen. The shop that feels trustworthy gets considered. And the shop that makes the next step easy is often the one that gets the call. And that's how you can win this direct work. It's not luck. It's not by hoping the customer's going to figure it out or talk to their grandma, but it's by being the shop that shows up clearly and feels like that safest choice. And this is important because it shows us something very useful. Direct work is not random. It follows a pattern. And once you understand that pattern, you can start building toward it. And that is where more control begins, because the more often your shop becomes visible, trustworthy, easy choice, the more often you create those opportunities that you're not depending on a DRP or another outside direct referral flow. So, just to reiterate, if a shop wants more direct work, this is where it starts. It starts with visibility, because no matter how good your work is, no matter how strong your reputation is offline, customers can't choose a shop they can't find. And that's why visibility comes first. It comes before trust, it comes before the conversion, it comes before the phone call. Your shop has to be present where customers are looking. And that matters because direct work does not necessarily begin with the customer call. It begins when the moment the customer starts searching and starts looking and starts seeing the different options. So if you want to reduce dependency and build a stronger second engine, the first question is simple. Are customers actually seeing your shop when they're looking? Because if the answer is no, the rest of the system never really gets a chance to work. So once we've established visibility, the next thing that drives direct work is trust. Because being seen is not enough by itself. Customers still need a reason to feel confident choosing your shop. And that's where trust signals come in. Things like strong reviews, professional photos, a credible online presence all help to reduce the doubt and build the trust. They help the customer feel like this is a real shop. This is a trustworthy shop. This is the shop that's going to handle my car and my job well. And that matters because direct work is not just about getting found, it's also about getting chosen. So if visibility gets your shop into consideration, trust is what helps to move the customer closer to making a decision, closer to action. And that is why direct work grows when trust signals get stronger. So once a customer sees the shop and feels good about it, the next step has to feel easy. That is where a lot of direct work is won or lost. If the customer can't quickly call, they can't request an estimate, they can't get directions, they don't understand what to do next, hesitation shows up. And hesitation usually leads to that lost opportunity, because customers, your prospects, your potential customers, are not looking for extra steps. They're looking for that easiest, safest option. And remember, this is about how they feel. And that's why clear calls to action matter so much. A visible shop gets seen, a trustworthy shop gets considered, but the shop that makes the next step simple is often the one that's going to get contacted. So if you want more direct work, it can't stop at visibility and trust. It has to make action easy. So at this point, I think we're starting to see something important here. Direct work is not random. It's not just about being in the right place at the right time. It is not something only a few lucky shops get to have. Direct work tends to follow a pattern. First, the shop has to be visible, then it has to be trustworthy, and then it has to make the next steps easy. And when those pieces all work together, the shop gives the customer a clear reason to choose it. And that's what creates direct opportunities more consistently. So, if a shop wants more control over where work comes from, this is good news because it means direct work can be built, not perfectly, not overnight, but systematically. Once you start thinking about direct work as a system, the whole conversation changes. It becomes less about hoping for better months and more about building a strong business. So, this is probably the most important strategy in everything I'm going to say today. If a shop wants to reduce dependency without creating new risk, the answer is not to pull back first. The smarter move is to build your second engine before changing the first one. So, in other words, don't remove existing volume and hope that direct work shows up in time. Build direct work while the current flow is still there. It protects your car count, it protects the team, it protects your cash flow. It gives you the room to make decisions from a stronger position and instead of under pressure. And this can be where shops get it wrong. They think the choice is to either stay dependent or make a big move. But that's not the real choice. The real choice is whether to build another source of demand before you need it. Because once that second engine starts working, the owner, manager has more freedom to choose, more freedom to balance, and more freedom to guide the business without putting the shop at risk. So once a shop decides to build a stronger second engine, the next question is, where do we start? And the answer is not everything. It can be overwhelming, like, where should I start? But the smartest place to start is with the work you want more of, the jobs that fit your shop best, the work that supports, maybe it's stronger margins, maybe it's better labor rates on certain types of work, the opportunities that move your shop in a healthier direction. Because if the goal is more control, then we shouldn't just be aiming for more volume. We should aim for a volume that fits our shop better. And that helps when we think through that helps us to get a clear target, and it helps to give our marketing a clear direction, and it helps us to grow towards the kind of work that we want more of instead of just taking whatever shows up. So this step is really about intention, not just building another source of demand, but building the right source of demand. Once a shop gets clear on the kind of work you want more of, the next step is to strengthen visibility and trust before making any major changes. And this part matters a lot because if the shop isn't easy to find, if it doesn't look credible, when customers first find it, direct work will not be consistent. So before trying to reduce dependency, the smartest move is to make sure that the foundation is strong. That means the shop is visible where customers are looking. It means a review support trust. It means the online presence looks credible and up to date. It means that customers can quickly feel confident that this is the shop that I want to call. And this is how direct work starts becoming more reliable, not by pulling back first, by building the visibility, the trust that gives direct opportunities a real chance to grow. So this is where the conversation has to become practical. If a shop wants to reduce dependency safely, we can't make this decision based on our gut feelings alone. We have to track what is actually happening. How many phone calls are coming in? How many estimate opportunities are being generated? What kind of work is showing up? And over time, how is that mix changing? Because when you can see these numbers, you can guide your business better. You can tell whether direct work is growing, whether it's shrinking. You can tell where the opportunities, the quality opportunities are coming from. You can make better decisions about what to lean into, when to adjust things, and when the shop is truly becoming balanced. And this is how we reduce risk, not by guessing, but by measuring what is changing and making decisions based on that data that we're collecting. I would say this is one of the biggest differences between a reactive shop and a more stable shop. Winning shops don't wait until volume drops to start thinking about building their engines to generate direct work. They don't wait until the car count gets soft. They don't wait until pressure turns into panic. They start building before they need rescue. And I really believe that's why you guys are here, because building a stronger second engine takes intention, it takes consistency, and it works best when the shop has enough breathing room to do it right. If the ship is sinking, it can't be done right. So the strongest move is not to react, but it's to prepare early. And this is how better shops create more control over time, not by scrambling when things get tight, but by building stability before they actually need it. This is another important mindset shift. A lot of shop owners can be tempted to think, I'll focus on marketing when things slow down. But the stronger move is the opposite. The better time to build is while the shop is still busy, while volume is still there, while the business still has enough strength to build carefully instead of reacting. Because when a shop waits until the car count drops, then every decision starts being urgent. The urgency, and then that urgency usually leads us to short-term thinking. And when a shop builds from strength, we have more room to be intentional. We have more room to improve the visibility. We have more room to strengthen the trust. We have more room to build this direct work the right way. And this is how stronger shops create better long-term stability, not a short-term stability. Not by waiting for pressure, but by building while they still have the momentum. And another thing about a reactive shop versus a strong shop, winning shops don't wait until volume drops to start thinking about direct work. They don't wait until the car count gets soft. They don't wait until they're panicking. They start building before they need help. And that matters because building a stronger second engine takes intention. It takes consistency. It takes time. And it works best when we have that breathing room to do it the right way. So I just encourage you, don't wait for it to get slow. And it looks like I have a repeat of slides there. Let's see, I think, all right, there we go. This is another thing that winning shops do differently. They stop thinking in terms of random tactics, and they stop bouncing from one marketing idea or one shiny object to the next, hoping that something finally works. We need to think in systems. A system that helps customers find the shop, a system that helps the shop look trustworthy once it's found, a system that makes the next step easy. So interest turns into that call, into that estimate request. That matters because tactics by themselves can be really scattered. Like I mentioned, it's like a shiny object. 1 month it can be ads, 1 month that can be social media, maybe it's a website update. But without a system, it's hard to build steady results. And stronger shops, they understand that control doesn't come from trying everything. It comes from building a repeatable process that supports visibility, supports trust, supports conversion over time. And that's what makes direct work more reliable. And this is really the outcome that any great shop is working towards. They don't want to trade one problem for another. We don't want more control if it means hurting volume. So the goal is to protect the car count while still building leverage at the same time. And that's what balance creates. As the direct work grows, the shop has more options, it has more flexibility, more leverage, and less pressure. That doesn't necessarily mean that your DRPs disappear. It means that the shop gets stronger because it has more than one engine supporting the growth. And that's what puts us into a better position, not panic, not drastic moves, a healthy business with more balance, more leverage, and more control. Let's talk a little bit about what success actually starts to look like. True success is having more balanced demand. Not all the work coming from one place, not the business leaning too heavily on one channel, but a healthy mix. Some work still may come through DRPs, some through referrals, some through fleet accounts, some through dealerships, a stronger flow, and then a stronger flow of direct consumer work alongside it. And that kind of balance changes the feel of the business. It reduces that pressure that comes from over dependence when 90% of your work is coming from one or two DRPs. It gives you more flexibility. It creates a stronger foundation where you're no longer relying too heavily on one source. So the first sign of progress is not perfection. It's balance, where we have a better mix of work coming in from multiple sources. So the business becomes steadier and less exposed over time. This is also where payoff really starts to become real. When the shop has more balance in where the work comes from, you're usually gaining more influence over the kind of work coming in. Because as we've mentioned before, not all volume is created equal. Some jobs keep the shop busy, but they're not moving the business forward. They're not creating what you're looking to create. Some work creates a lot of pressure without maybe the level of return. But when you start building a stronger mix of direct work alongside your other flows of work, it can move toward better opportunities, better fit jobs, maybe better margins, less pressure. This is an important shift. Here's another sign that your shop is getting healthier. When a shop is less dependent on one source of work, change doesn't hit at the same level. If DRP volume shifts, yes, you may feel it, but it doesn't create that same level of fear because the shop is no longer leaning so heavily on that one channel, on that one DRP. It changes the emotional side of running the shop. There's less pressure, less scrambling, less sense of things being outside of our control. And I think that matters more than business shop owners, managers sometimes realize, because a shop that's less exposed is a shop that can respond more calmly, make better decisions, keep moving forward with confidence when we have that balance. And here's one of the biggest long-term benefits of having more control over where work comes from. It gives the shop owner more confidence in growth decisions. When the shop is too dependent on one source, it's hard to plan with confidence. Maybe hiring feels risky. Production planning feels less certain. Investing in that new piece of equipment, investing in that new OEM certification. These decisions are hard. They feel harder because of being too dependent on outside flow. But when we have that healthier mix of work, more control, it's easier to make these decisions, easier to move forward with clarity and have that stability and confidence. So now we're going to move a little bit into the next step of this webinar. Before a shop can create more balance, we have to get honest about where the work is coming from today. Not where it feels like it's coming from, not where the owner might hope it's coming from, but where is it actually coming from? How much of the current car count is tied to DRPs. We need to get clear on that. Is it 5 cars a month? Is it 100 cars a month? Is it 500 cars a month? Is it 60%? Is it 40%? Is it 20%? Is it 100%? How much is coming from referrals? How much is truly direct consumer work? Because until that mix is clear, it's very hard to make decisions about what needs to change. And this is where clarity starts. Once we can start seeing the current mix clearly, we can start guiding in the direction and moving in the direction we want to go. You can also see where your dependency is the highest. Where is your risk concentrated? Is it in a State Farm DRP? Is it in a dealership relationship? Is it in a fleet account? Where is your risk concentrated? And then you can start thinking about where's the healthier balance and what could that actually look like in our shop. So you can't control your shop until you first understand this critical point of where is your mix coming from. So once we've established where our current mix is at, the next step is to identify where are opportunities that already exist. Because in most cases, these opportunities are not imaginary. Typically, there's opportunities there. There are people in your market looking for collision repair shops, for auto body shops. Potential customers are searching, and there are jobs that you might want more of. The issue usually is not that the opportunities do not exist. The issue typically is that the shop may not be capturing enough of those opportunities. And that's why this step matters. The goal is to find the gaps. Where is opportunity present? Because if the shop is not visible as a trusted or as an easy to choose as it could be, because once those gaps become clear, your path forward gets clearer too. Now the conversation can stop being theoretical and actually can be practical. Where is the opportunity already sitting and what needs to improve so your shop can go out and capture more of those opportunities? And I see I scrolled backwards. There we go. So next step, once the shop, you understand your mix and where the opportunities exist, the next step is to look at the kind of the competitive reality in your market. And I don't know where all you guys are from today, but wherever you're from, there's the reality, the competitive reality is different for each one of you for a lot of reasons. When we started analyzing this is where a lot of kind of hidden insights can show up. And in most cases, your competitors are not necessarily winning work by accident. Maybe they're stronger somewhere than where you're not. Maybe they're showing up more often online. Maybe they're looking more credible. Maybe they make the next steps really easy. And when that happens, they start capturing opportunities that could have gone to you or to another shop. And that's why this step matters. The goal is not to just look inward. It's to look out where competitors have an advantage and where that advantage is costing your shop opportunities. Because once you start identifying these gaps, you can stop guessing and you can start seeing the opportunities of what could be done, and then analyzing why are we not getting this work and what needs to change to become more competitive in the market to get this direct work. And at the end of the day, this is really what shop owners, I believe this is what you guys want. Not more confusion, not more random marketing, not another vague idea that sounds good, but we want a clear plan, a plan that shows how to create more balance in where work comes from, a plan that helps reduce overdependency without putting the car count at risk, a plan that gives more control over the future of the shop, of your shop. And that's the real purpose of this webinar. Is I want you guys to be able to move from dependency to balance, from reaction to control, from uncertainty to a clear path forward. Because once you start understanding where the business is today, where the opportunities are, where the competitors are stronger, the next step becomes easier. It's not just guesswork anymore. So before I wrap this up, I just want to ask you a few simple questions, and you can just answer them to yourself. Are you too dependent right now? Because if most of your work is coming from one source, your shop is more exposed than it might appear to be. And if shifts in volume create immediate stress, that's also a sign of exposure. If direct work is weak, that's a sign of exposure. And the reason this matters is not to create fear, it's to create clarity, because a lot of shop owners don't realize how dependent their business has become until something changes, and then the pressure is really on. The good news is this is fixable. And this is not about making some drastic move. It's about building more balance, more visibility, more trust, more control. And once that process starts, the shop gets stronger. So if you're interested, go ahead, scan that QR code and schedule some one-on-one time with me. I'm happy to spend some more time strategizing with you of how you can move your shop forward. Maybe you realize, boy, I'm really dependent on a lot of DRPs and I want to change that. So feel free to grab some time on my calendar and we can talk through how you can start leveraging your shop's strengths and growing it. All right, guys, I appreciate you jumping on this webinar. I hope you have one nugget that you can take away and that can help you grow and build your shop. I appreciate you taking the time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute yourself. I'll hang around just for a few minutes longer. This webinar has went a little bit longer than mine some do, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Alrighty, guys. Well, I appreciate you very much. And thanks for jumping on. You have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world. Take care.